Hello, and it's really good to be with you this morning. I'm sorry that I'm not actually with you. It would be lovely to see you all personally, but we're in this Zoom church, so let's enjoy it. It's July, and so I think we should start with the traditional questions for this time of year. How are your New Year's resolutions going? Did you make any? Can you remember them? Okay. If you didn't make any New Year's resolutions, did you make any decisions about changing your life at the beginning of lockdown? Did you decide that you were going to learn Japanese, or that you were going to make sourdough bread every week, or that you were going to get up at 6 every morning to do yoga? How's that going? We've been in lockdown over 100 days. And as we start to come out of it, maybe it's time to reflect a little bit on where we've been and where we've come from, and things that we maybe have decided to do at the beginning that we might or might not have got through. So you're nearing the end of your series on holy habits, looking at fresh ways of living out your Christian life, and starting with those firm foundations in Jesus, linking to having strong relationship and fellowship with each other, and then reflecting Jesus's love out to the communities that we live and work in. And this week we're looking at giving and generosity. I don't know how that makes you feel. I don't know whether you are naturally someone that likes to give, whether that's financial or otherwise. I enjoy it, but it doesn't always come easy to me. I'm more of the person that wants to think, well, something might come up in future when I'm going to need this. Many years ago, my brother and I were on the school bus, and we got stuck on the A14. We were stuck there for hours. In fact, we never made it into school because we were stuck on the A14 for so long. And my brother had shared out his packed lunch to his friends, people that were sitting around him. And when we got back home, I still had my packed lunch with me. Now, to be fair, my reasoning was that we might be there for a lot longer, so maybe I'd need it later on. But I missed out on the opportunity to give, and I still remember that. And this morning, we've been looking at this passage in 2 Corinthians chapter 9. And the church in Corinth had offered to send money to support the Christians elsewhere. And now Paul was asking them to come through on that offer. They'd been enthusiastic, but they need to follow up with action. And even though they'd been willing, Paul had sent these 3 men to go and to help out. This wasn't about Paul sending in the heavies, about extorting the money out of them. Paul urges them in verse 5 to give willingly. Their attitude to giving should come out of their love for God, their acknowledgement that God is in control and that they trust him. And their attitude was supposed to be, in verse 6, cheerful. So it seems like God wants a combination of both attitude and action. Our attitude to God is reflected in our attitude towards our possessions, towards our time, the things that we have around us. But that attitude has to then come out, be translated into action. Now, importantly, this passage is not saying that the more you give, the more you will get. This is not saying that you will become rich by signing up to this Christian speaker or that one. In fact, if you do end up getting richer, you're just going to have to give more anyway. But I wonder how you've been thinking about your giving over the last few months. Maybe you might have been looking at your finances, and the last few months might have been a real struggle for you. And now, as we look at the looming recession, you might be worried about your job. And when you look at your finances, you might see that your outgoings are more than your incomings. And actually, this is the time to rein in your financial giving. Maybe you're at the other end of the spectrum, and maybe actually lockdown has meant that you save a bit of money. Maybe you're not putting as much petrol in your car, or not buying coffee or the odd lunch out. And maybe this is the time to you to look at your finances and think, actually, maybe I can afford to squeeze a little bit more giving out of my money. So if you're in either of those 2 camps or somewhere in between, then this passage is good news for you. Those that can give should give. Those that need help should accept it when it's offered. This way, Paul says in this passage in 2 Corinthians, we become part of the fellowship of believers. Christians across the world survive because Christians in other parts of the world give. Giving helps us become part of that fellowship, part of the body. The need in one part of the body can be met from another part. It's a privilege for us to be part of that. And our giving can help us to be in fellowship with each other. And of course, it's not just about financial giving. It can be about our time, our possessions, all sorts of things. I've been in lots of talks about giving in the past, and when they move on from financial giving, I breathe a bit of a sigh of relief and think, oh, it's okay. Time, I can give that. And it is about all these other things, but don't lose sight of your finances. Don't lose sight at this time of financial pressure when loads of charities are coming forward and asking us to give a bit more. Don't lose sight of the fact that your finances might actually help someone out. But we do also need to look at other things that we're giving. Maybe our time. Maybe that is helping with community groups at church, or helping with the music, or cleaning the toilet, or organising the rota, or doing the photocopying. And as we're looking at moving back towards our buildings at some point, there'll be lots of new jobs coming up that will need to be done. And they can only happen if we as a church, as a body, if we all play our parts. That's how it will work. Our attitude and our actions must come together. And maybe you were thinking that, yeah, actually, I would like to help with something else at church. Well, don't wait. Don't wait to offer after this service. Drop someone an email, give someone a call and just say, I really want to be involved in that. If you wait until we get back into what might be some sort of normal, then other pressures get in and we all forget to offer to do the things that we thought we wanted to do at this point in time. So don't wait. Offer up your time now. And as I was thinking about this, I was reminded of a time in the Old Testament where attitude and actions came together. And at the time that I was thinking about was when God gave his people instructions for making the tabernacle, the special place where God was going to live among his people. And these instructions are specific and they're really detailed. The tabernacle was big and complicated. And before God gives Moses the detailed instructions for the tabernacle, in chapter 25, God tells them how they're going to build it. Exodus 25, the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to bring me an offering. You are to receive the offering for me from everyone whose heart prompts them to give. So then a few chapters on, Moses tells the people all the materials that they need to build this tabernacle. They need lots of different materials and they need skilled people to make them. They need people who could make tents or carve wood or make things out of fabric, people that could work metal, people could make clothes for the priests. He was even looking for someone to make the tent pegs. And it didn't matter how much or how little people had, how skilled they were or how skilled they thought they were, everybody had something to give. No one was told what to bring, they were just told what was needed. And then the response from the people came. The whole Israelite community withdrew from Moses' presence, and everyone who was willing and whose heart moved them came and brought an offering to the Lord for the work on the tent of meeting, for all its service, and for the sacred garments. People brought all sorts of things. They brought gold jewelry, they brought brooches, earrings, rings, whatever jewelry they had. They brought fabric, they brought goat skins, they brought wool, they brought leather. They brought metals, silver, gold. They brought wood. Most women would have known how to spin wool into yarn, and it says that every skilled woman spun thread and brought that. The leaders had precious stones that they could bring. People brought spices and olive oil as they were asked. And they all brought willingly to God. And they brought so much stuff. Every morning, so much stuff came to Moses that in the end, Moses had to tell the people to stop. Can you imagine? Attitude and action brought together, attitude in action. Moses had to tell the people to stop giving. There was so much there that there wasn't anything more that was needed. And if you are a little bit more like me and you might be saving your packed lunch for when you're hungrier later on, then maybe you were one of those Israelites that had carefully counted the cost and you'd looked at what you'd got and you'd thought, yep, now I know what I can give, and you brought it. And that's the morning that Moses says, we don't need anything else, thank you, it's enough. And you haven't even given your little bit. So maybe now is the time for you to give. Maybe now is the time for you to put your attitude into action. You might think that you don't have a lot to offer. You might think that you don't have a lot to give. And I'm sure there were Israelites that thought the same thing. Maybe what you have is time, and you think that's not very much. But maybe that's time where there is someone who has been so under pressure homeschooling over the last few months, and all they want is a phone call with someone to talk about grown-up things that doesn't involve their primary school child. And maybe you've got the time just to ring someone up, have a conversation with them. Maybe you're the sort of person that notices who's missing from this Zoom call, and you've got the time and the skill to see that. And you just pop them a little text or a WhatsApp and say, hey, everything all right? Maybe you have a skill in knitting. Well, that can definitely be used by God. Loads of places are asking for donations of knitted goods or for sewing if you're good at that. Maybe you are skilled at leaving a gift on someone's doorstep anonymously, or ordering a bunch of flowers to get delivered to them, or just popping a little note through their door to say that you're thinking of them. Those are massively important skills, your attitude and your actions coming together. Maybe your skill is sleeping really badly, and that might be transferred into a skill of praying for people in the middle of the night. Our attitude and our action come together. How amazing would it be if at the end of lockdown, this church is overflowing with people giving money, giving time, giving their services, volunteering. And in a few weeks' time, your church leaders have to come and say, whoa, stop. We can't take any more volunteers. Could you please just all stop volunteering? Our attitude, our cheerful giving, our attitude to God born out in action. How amazing would that be? The people in Corinth, and the Israelites in that passage in the Old Testament gave, and they weren't just giving because they thought that it was what they had to do, but they were giving out of their attitude, out of their love for God, but it was translated into action.